everyone, it's Michelle. So, as promised, I am bringing you my Coach Empire 28 in honey that I distressed in the natural daylight. I'm actually pop open my. Are you ready? Here's what she looks like. And I will insert some other footage or clips for you to see, but this bag is absolutely gorgeous, and the project turned out so much better than I expected. I don't think that I've ever thought of really customizing any of my leather bags to this extent until I started purchasing the Coach bags. And I think because it's like you look at these bags and you can tell that one, they're very good quality leather, but also Coach does not put a whole lot of extra, like, yes, they do put coating, like a protective sheen, but they don't have a lot of like false top coats on them. Like, if you look at, like, say for instance, like a Tory Burch leather bag versus a Coach leather bag, right? You're going to see a lot more of a coating on it. And I never really thought about doing it until I did that first Brooklyn. And I love the Brooklyn because the Brooklyn is literally just leather. There's no lining. There's nothing else to worry about on the inside. You do have that kind of like more suede interior or more natural leather interior. And the outside is just a nice, soft, supple leather with a little bit of a top coat. So after I distressed that Brooklyn 28 as a keepsake for my sister, I started thinking, okay, so now I have to do something for me. And I was truly infatuated with the fall runway for 2025 that premiered, I think, was it the beginning of 2025, or yeah, I think it was like February-ish, right? And it was absolutely just gorgeous. And I'm not a big bag person, but I do like to play with silhouettes that are a little bit bigger than what I normally carry. And I really loved the distressed empires that went down the runway. And I was hoping that they would have at least released like a small amount of those truly distressed empires. We did eventually get the loved leather, which is black, which is great. And I think a lot of us appreciated that. But as much as I was hoping I would love the loved leather, I felt like when I saw it in person, it looked like a very manufactured process, which I can understand, especially when you're mass producing bags. Honestly, I know now, having done a few bags myself, it does take a lot of man hours to be able to do that and to create a unique look, and especially to create a distressed look that falls in line with how leather bags and different silhouettes of leather bags naturally wear in. So I just decided, you know what? I've got time. I enjoy creative projects. I've been taking a break from my artwork that I normally do, which is actually like collage and drawing and charcoal. That's a secret, by the way. You don't know about that. And I've just been trying to get myself to do some other creative projects. And somebody asked me, oh, well, how did you know how to do that? I was like, well, my leather resume is technically that I did get an A in shop class in middle school, and my burnished stamped bookmark was probably one of the best ones in class. And so with that confidence behind me, I decided to go ahead and attack this bag. I will tell you, I almost bought this Honey Empire brand new, and I was like, I love the bag. I love the honey. It was just the undertones were just a little too cool for me, and I didn't know if I was going to ruin the bag or not. So I actually was able to find a like new Honey Empire on Poshmark, and I got a good discount that made it feel like it was in the safe zone. And honestly, yes, it took a little bit of time. It took a little bit of work, but it wasn't hard. The first thing and the big thing with any of these distressed bags is the sanding. We do have Google and we do have ChatGPT. So if you are interested in distressing your own bag, I would definitely suggest that you use those resources for step-by-step completion. I did use it for an understanding of what were the best products to use on the bag to remove some of the color. I didn't want to just use bleach, and I didn't want to just use acetone because I do know that those actually degrade the quality of the leather. And so I did use that to look it up. And the products that I ended up using to remove some of the color as I was sanding was rubbing alcohol. I think they recommend 70%. And then I did use a little bit of white vinegar, which is also recommended. And then as a last resort, they suggest you can use some Goof Off. I didn't use Goof Off on this bag, but I did use it on my Merlot Brooklyn because I wanted to remove more of the color and create more of that kind of Western distressed look. So let me see if I can give you a clear understanding and step by step of how I went about doing this bag. And then I did not record the whole process, but I did take video after each step. And so I'll insert that here somewhere on the screen so you can get an idea. And the biggest thing I would say if you are going to do your own distress bag is just trust the process. In art in general, that's the rule, right? Trust the process. But the other thing too is to do the steps a little bit at a time. Once you're not overwhelming yourself, but two, also so you're not degrading the media that you're using. You know, if you take a little bit away at a time, you can always add more and fix it. But if you take away like all the color off the bag or you strip everything off the bag, then you're gonna have a lot more to try and fix. And at that point, you might have ruined some of the leather. Okay, so as I mentioned, this started as just a Honey Empire 28. So I do have video of that. I did a first overall sanding with the 400 grain sandpaper. And I did that across the entire bag, but then there's areas that I focused on removing more of the color from. I had just looked up some pictures online to see how some of the runway bags appeared, how some of the loved leather Empire bags appeared, and how some of the worn Empires look to see where these bags normally settle with their lines. And I really focus on those areas because if you think about it, when you are working with a light bag, right, or when you're carrying a light bag, as it gets worn out, those areas that stick out are going to maybe rub off and they're going to lose their coloring more, or they're going to take on like color transfer from other things in those areas more. And I wanted to emphasize that with the dark colors. So because I was taking a lighter bag and essentially burnishing or making the edges darker, I knew that wherever I was going to be focusing on with the sandpapering, that would be where I applied my color. So I focused heavily on the handles because I just love that look. Really wanted to put some more depth there. I focused on the sides here, and that really wanted to emphasize those unique kind of, I guess, loops, or what are we calling these? Nostrils. I really wanted to emphasize like the little nostril appearance on the sides of the Empire. I also wanted to emphasize the kind of little straps, the leather detailing here on the sides, and then as well as like the seams around those areas. I did also do the bottom of the bag because again, I really wanted this to look like a vintage, well-worn, loved bag. So I did an overall sanding with the 400, and I used the majority of the 400, just getting that first sheen off. And then you wipe the bag down with a damp cloth and you have to let it dry. The big step, the big thing to do after every sequence of this process is to wipe the bag down and let it dry before you do anything else, because especially as you're sanding, you're going to get a light layer of dust on the bag that makes you think that it's lighter than it is, which can be good or bad depending on how much depth and variation you want in the leather on your bag. So then after I wiped that down, I did go over the bag and I just kind of emphasized some of the areas that I wanted to lighten the natural color. I rubbed that down a little bit with the rubbing alcohol, and then I wiped the bag down and let it dry again. And then I went back in and sanded some more. Again, I really wanted to remove more color off certain areas, especially the handles and the sides. Wiped it down, let it dry, and then I applied the first layer of the gel. Now, when I did my Brooklyn, I did use some of the leather paint. I decided not to do that this time because the leather paint does saturate much deeper into the leather, and it requires a lot more sanding and a lot more blending in and blending out to get the color to mix well. So I decided not to use that on this bag this time. I'll save that black paint for another project. I instead used vintage gel. They have these leather gels you can buy. I just picked mine up at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. This last time I got it at Michael's, I think they have 3 different shades of brown, ranging from light to dark. And then they did actually have the vintage black in stock. So I already had the medium brown, and I intended to use that with this bag to warm up the brown of the bag. And then I also used the black. Since I knew that black is so dark and so deep, what you do is you apply a little of the gel, you wipe off any excess, and then you just rub it in to kind of spread it and create more of a natural appearance versus like stark lines. And then you let it dry. So after the black dried, then I sanded a little bit, and I sanded back from the lighter parts of the bag towards the darker parts because I wanted the black to be concentrated in certain areas and not to be so spread over. And then I because the medium brown was in between the black and in between the bag's natural honey color, then I went in with the medium brown, and the medium brown I did apply over the entire bag. So you'll see this has much more of like a cognac color in a lot of the areas here. And then I let that dry all the way. And then I went back and I sanded with 600, and I brushed that back out. I brought the 800 back out in some areas. I did want to have like a lighter spot here on the front. So as the gel settled in and then I sanded back over, you can see more of the natural pull up in the leather. I emphasized a little bit more with 800 on the corners of the bag because I do love that look. On the back, I kind of did a very similar thing. And then I went back over the handles again with 800 to lighten that up again. And then I did one more very light, small coat of medium. And then I just honestly wiped the bag down. I used a leather cleaner and a leather conditioner. And then I applied a sheen or a sealant to my bag, which is the same brand from that the gel is. And this particular sheen or sealant or top coat that I used also promises to moisture and condition the bag. So I put a very, very, very light layer on the bag because it is made of acrylic, and the acrylic, when it dries, can actually make your bag a little bit stiffer. And with all the sanding, the bag and the leather had actually gotten so smooth and so soft, and I really didn't want to lose that. So I did a very, very light layer of that. And then I went back over the top of the sheen with the 400. And what that did was that allowed me to sand some of the shininess of the acrylic top coat down and restore the softness of the bag. And when I tell you this bag is just so soft and so smooth, like, I mean, I can't even, it's just amazing. It really is. It just feels nothing like the original bag. This to me just feels like a loved vintage bag. And like, I'm squishing it, I'm squeezing it, I'm just loving on it. And after I did that final sanding, I did go ahead and condition it with the leather CPR, which I recently had just got in. And I will tell you, I did do the whole bag. So I did, of course, you know, you can see the front. This is what it looks like with the tags out of the way. So I did the whole bag. I did the handles. I was very in depth with that. I wanted to make sure that looked like worn handles, right? I did do the top of the bag. Yes, yes, because that's what a good artist does, right? You leave nothing untouched. And I even did the leather pull, which is probably my favorite part. So I'm actually now working to get the strap finished, since this 28 does come with a leather strap, and I want the whole bag to be complete and cohesive. I had previously, you know, been storing my city tags on my Coach Brooklyn, but as I got like my third tag on there, I was like, oh, this isn't really meant for this bag, right? Because the bag is really thin. I think it looks good with one or two, but I didn't like the way that it started to spread and move around. And I really feel like the Empire 28 is just the perfect bag for accessories and for tags. And I'm trying to collect as many of these city tags as possible. And I wanted them to live on one bag. And as I was doing this project, I loved the mixture of the honey brown and black. And I thought, what a beautiful aesthetic, something that allows me to easily mix the metals, because even though this is a gold hardware bag, I've got like the gunmetal here. I've got the gunmetal printing there. I've got gunmetal on my tags. I've got gold on tags. And I was like, this will be it. This will be the bag that holds all of my city tags. And as I get more, I can put some on the back, and this will be just my it bag. This will be my bag. And I'm like so excited. So anyway, as soon as I finished this bag, I had to move right into it. I got this bag for so many reasons. Of course, I wanted to have a project bag. I do really love the honey color, and I do have a wallet in the honey color. So I'm contemplating about whether or not I'm going to distress that wallet to go with it. And I like the Empires because I like the openness of it. I can use some of my bigger pouches and some of my bigger wallets. I can carry my larger eyeglass case, and it's just easy to get in and out. But then also I think I like because the zipper on this is a little bit recessed. The bag just seems more protected, so I don't feel like I need to always zip it up. But I also intend this to be not just a large purse carry, but also a work bag, especially when I go to conferences where I need a few more items, but I don't ever carry like a big heavy bag. And I wanted something that had feet, so I wouldn't hesitate putting it on the ground. I wouldn't hesitate using it at the airport. And I want it to be something that I could bang up. And so when I come back from a trip, all I have to do is just clean it because, it's dirty out there. And so this is that bag. I do have a trip next week, and I'm not sure if I'm going to take it there because the vibe is a little bit more SoCal, but I am going to take it next month on my Texas trip and on my New York trip later in the year. And I'm very excited to just see how it works because to me, it's like this is a bag that very much exudes my personal style, but it also maintains a professional appearance. So it's not something where I'd be like, ooh, is this a bag that really works in this flow? But I'm super duper excited, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. I may still work it down a little bit more and do a little bit more sanding, or I may just see how the bag wears naturally. I really enjoyed being able to save some money, get a very unique look and a very unique bag. And I totally get why people love this Empire 28 and why they prefer like the soft carryall over the 26. I had purchased a 26 and ended up returning it because that base was going to get on my nerves. But the 28 is just so good, and I'm gonna just beat her up. Like, I'm gonna stretch her, I'm gonna pull it apart, I'm gonna just squish on it and love on it and let this really wear in well. And I think the fact that I've already gone ahead and distressed it, I'm excited about not having to baby this bag. So if you have any questions about the process or about the materials, or if you are interested in having me distress a bag for you, I am open and willing to do that. There definitely would be some details we'd have to discuss, and then we would sign a sort of agreement, understanding that essentially by distressing this bag, you are degrading it. There are no guarantees other than the fact that I will do my very best work for this. But anyway, yeah, so I will leave my email address in the description if you're interested in inquiring about having me distress a bag for you. Otherwise, I look forward to discussing any questions that you have about the bag or about the process. And thank you so much for the love that you've shown this bag and for your questions and for your compliments. This was another great bag made possible by Coach. And again, just another reason why I love the brand, for the opportunity to express our own creativity and to be able to do so and have such a luxurious bag and a luxurious experience at a very reasonable price. I'll see you guys in the next video.